Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your location. Thank you so much for joining today's session brought to you by SheTrades Commonwealth and Growth Mosaic. We kicked off last week and we continue today. Today's webinar topic is ensuring business continuity using financial management. And to lead us in this session, we have Ralph Gibbs from Growth Mosaic. Ralph Gibbs is an associate at Growth Mosaic, where he works with the acceleration team to develop client businesses to become investment ready. He transferred from the market intelligence team, where he conducted research in investable sectors to identify scalable impact businesses. Ralph brings on board his creative analytical thinking skills, along with a passion for finance, technology, and innovation. We are happy to have you on again, Ralph, and over to you now.
Hi, thanks Regina for the introduction and welcome again to all of you. It's nice seeing those of you who were in the first session, and if you weren't in the first session, it would still be good to have you because this session, even though it builds on it, it's independent and can be picked up from here. So this second session is on financial management and we are focusing more on business continuity. So to start off, we start with the objectives of this session, and basically what we are trying to do is explain the concept of business continuity, understand what is needed for, like planning for it, explore how we can plan for unforeseen circumstances, go through some tools that would help us, discuss the effectiveness of these tools, and also essentially the entire point of this session is to engage in an interactive conversation around business continuity and to spare interest in finding out more about it. So to start off, understanding business continuity. What do we understand by business continuity? And like I said earlier, this entire session is going to be very interactive. It's not just a one-sided conversation. So I'd like to know, you can take a stab. We'll be using the chat box a lot. So anyone can put in what they know about business continuity. I sort of hinted on this in the last session, but what do we understand by business continuity? Or what do we think it means? Let's put some things in the chat box, what we think business continuity means. Okay. So we have a few in already. Some people are saying continuity equals sustainability. Okay, that's nice. Sustaining businesses for a long time. Okay, a long time. Sustainability of the business ecosystem. So this person speaking of, Notion is speaking of the entire ecosystem. To keep a business growing after I leave. Okay, yeah, nice, Jackie. The business being stable. Someone saying sustainability equals retention of clients. Okay, so we see a lot of sustainability. Someone saying meeting costs at any point. These are all good. We are really, really close. So business continuity. It basically refers to maintaining the business functions, like we rightly said, or quickly resuming them in the event of a major disruption. As a reminder, we should kindly mute our microphones where we are not speaking in order to reduce disruptions. All right, so like I was saying, business continuity basically refers to maintaining the functions of the business. So how do we keep operating at normal levels or at normal capability in the event of any unexpected or unforeseen circumstances? And then this, building on that, we have business continuity planning, which is basically developing a plan for, in the case of the occurrence of some sort of disruption, it could be common or uncommon, unforeseen disruption. What do we do about it? So that's what leads us to the need for business continuity planning. And I'd like us to again use the chat box. What disruptions, again, COVID is an easy one. So aside COVID, what disruptions can a company experience? Let's use the chat box. Do we have any ideas? Aside COVID, again. Okay, so Priscilla says low sales. Jackie says key staff resigning. Do we have any more ideas? What other disruptions could we face aside COVID? Cyber attacks, nice. Trade barriers, okay. We still have COVID-19. Again, aside COVID-19, please. That's a very easy one. Okay, conflict, war, okay. IT system. So we see a lot of cyber, okay. Disaster, floods. These are all good. Right. So again, we'll go back to the core objectives of financial management. We spoke about this in the first session, and I'm sure a lot of you remember. So we discussed that the key objectives are profit maximization and wealth maximization. So then to find out, I'd like to know, so aside COVID-19, the issues we are mentioning, so we have political interferences, some are saying cyber attacks, etc. I'd like to know which which of these have we encountered already? So the first one, aside COVID-19, have you faced systematic disruptions in the operation of your business? Again, let's answer just the first one. So how prepared were we? So you should see a pop-up for a poll. And let's try to answer the first one. So aside COVID-19, have we faced any systematic disruptions? So you'd spend a few seconds answering the poll. It should pop up on your screens. So again, we are answering just the first one. So answering just the first one is fine. Okay. Spend like 30 seconds more. Okay. Khalida, you're having a problem submitting. Try again. So just answer the poll and submit. Okay, so for those having an issue with submitting the response, try answering the next two. So the second one and the third one. So if you're unable to submit, answer the second and the third polls and you should be able to submit. You spend 30 more seconds on that. Okay. All right, thanks. So from the poll, I'll share the results so you can see. 71% of us said, yes, we learned a lot from that experience. So most of us have already experienced an issue aside COVID. the next biggest group was no, we want to be prepared. So these are groups of people who have not experienced it. And these are the two biggest groups. So then let's explore what what were some of the issues that we had to deal with. Let's use the chat box. So aside COVID, for the 71% of us that had to deal with issues, what were those issues? What issues did we have to deal with? Let's use the chat box. Let's share some of them. Okay, so we have change of industry trends and economic downturn, bad government policies. Okay, again, we have resignation of key staff. Okay. Sudden change in consumer preferences, innovation, backup. Not sure what that means, but okay, backup. Increased price of raw materials. Okay, so something to do with supply chain. So these are all things we'd look at. So what's of the needs for continuity planning? Again, I'm using the first one, COVID-19, so global pandemics. We have natural disasters like people mentioned in the chat box, floods, etc. Man-made disasters. So this includes things like someone mentioned earlier, someone mentioned cyber attacks. So these are man-made sort of disasters where it's due to human error. It's not a force of nature. Utility failures, intentional sabotage. So this is an employee, it wasn't just by mistake, but it was intentional. Utility failures, we can all relate. So lots of African countries may have issues with electricity, electrical connection. And again, we have cyber security attacks. So how to create a continuity plan? Do we have backups of the most important elements of our businesses? And this was included in the first poll. So we just go back to some of the responses. We had the biggest group said 49% said some data have been backed up. The next biggest group said yes, all data is backed up regularly. Okay, so that's good. And 20% are saying no backups yet. So that means we still have some work to do. Now let's get back to continuity planning. How do we create a continuity plan? So the first step is identify the objectives of the plan and set goals. So it might be obvious, it might not be, but basically the continuity plan is, like we mentioned earlier, if there were to be anything unexpected happening to the business, how do we maintain that we are still achieving our goals? So first of all, to know we are still achieving our goals, we need to have set objectives and also have sort of milestones which we can track to know that we are meeting the company's objectives. And that also comes down in the continuity plan on a sort of smaller scale. So you also create a plan for the continuity plan. So what do you aim to achieve? And basically the aim is to ensure that a business is able to operate normally during unexpected events. The second step in creating a continuity plan is to develop a team and assign responsibilities. So in developing a team, this shouldn't focus on just one aspect of the business. So it's the entire business. If something unexpected were to happen to the business, what's the key team or what are the key elements of the business which we need to focus on in order to sustain the rest of the business? We need to create a team and assign responsibilities to them as to what they can chip in for us to bear in mind that in creating a continuity plan, for example, we need to focus on these aspects of IT, we need to focus on these aspects of our finances. We need to create a team, sort of a dream team that encompasses all these different segments of the business. We also need to conduct a business impact analysis. So what this basically does is you are basically looking at, based off the team you've developed, cross-section of the entire business, what will be the impact of any unexpected negative occurrence to any of these parts of the business? How is it going to affect you? And of course, we are looking from a financial management perspective. So it's financially, how is this going to affect you? After we've identified the sort of assigned financial impact value on these different segments, we now have to label them and rank them by importance. So for example, if we've identified that IT is critical to our business, we are an online business, we'd have to label it and also rank it by priority. And also we have to develop a plan to maintain operations for these different parts. So for example, if we have IT as the most valuable aspect, what do we do in terms of IT? If our business is cloud-based, do we have other cloud-based businesses that we can rely on? So for example, if you're using Amazon Web Services, have we explored using Google? What's the cost going to be to transfer from Amazon to Google Cloud? So label the business aspects by importance. And in this, again, we'd go back to the chat box. So what are the top 3 aspects of our business that are most important to us in terms of financial impact? So again, we may not have the exact numbers, but then let's use roughly off the top of our heads using the chat box. What do we think the 3 biggest aspects of our business in terms of financial impact, if anything bad were to happen? What are the 3 sectors of our business you'd have to look at? So let's use the chat box. So top 3 aspects of our business that are most important to us in terms of financial impact. So Abimbola says business development. Okay. So that's like increasing leads and sales. Jackie says sales, production, and staff. Lamide, logistics, product source, and marketing fees. Okay, cool. Marketing, branding, and sales. So you see a lot of sales. So Esther says payroll, salaries, wages. Okay. Clients, customers. Nice. Production, sales, logistics. Our networks. Okay. So as we can see from the chat box, again, even if we are not contributing in the chat box, I would ask us to still read what other people are experiencing. It would still be valuable to us. So going through what we've discussed in there, we've seen it encompasses basically a wide cross-section of the business. It's not just one aspect. It's not just our core business. It's not just our sales. It affects also the things that contribute to our sales. So getting started, how do you currently deal with disruptions? And do we have a plan? So for do we have a plan, we answered this in the poll and the results. So 49% of us said we are prepared for common disruptions. So these are disruptions that we commonly face. So it could be sales, maybe lower sales volume. What do we do about it? Maybe increase marketing expenditure. Someone is saying supply chain. So yeah, this could be a disruption, but how do we deal with it? A common answer is find a different supplier. So then yes, 49% prepared for common disruptions. 26% are prepared for unexpected disruptions, and that's actually important. And it's good to note COVID-19 is one of the unexpected disruptions. So some of us, 26% of us, are prepared or were prepared for COVID-19, and 26% equally are just going with the wind. So there's no plan yet. We're just going with whatever happens. Whatever happens, we try our best to survive. And aside these 26%, so the rest of us that had an answer, how do we currently deal with the disruptions? What did we do or how did we prepare? Again, back to the chat box. For the rest of us, not the 26%, the rest of us that said we were prepared, we are absolutely prepared for either expected or unexpected, common or uncommon. How do we plan on dealing with disruptions, or how did we plan on dealing with them? So to the chat box. We had an internal emergency plan. Okay, so basically the question is what was that internal emergency plan? So Esther, if you could elaborate on that. Notion says we are planning now. Okay, so Notion, what are you planning? What are the things you have in your plan? Jackie says having staff aware of each other's responsibilities. Okay. Christabel, for supplier and logistics issues, have and work with a backup vendor or supplier. Okay, so This is one of the common issues we face. We are relocating our production. Okay, so that's big. Okay. We have strict the team. Not sure what that means. I'm not sure if you could elaborate on that, what you did with the team. So Priscilla is increasing her supply chain. So probably referring to diversifying it. So not relying on just one supplier. Okay. We had 100 employees.
All right.
Okay. So Abimbola is saying how to increase revenue by getting new channels for sales to drive growth. Notion had 100 employees and had to cut jobs. Okay. We converted our staff to commission staff. Okay, so we see, so on all fronts, we have people changing suppliers, we have people changing how they relate to their employees, basically either cutting down staff or changing how you pay them. Okay. So in business continuity planning, we have basically two strategies. The first is prevention strategies. So in here, we detail any actions that a business needs to take as a preventative measure before the disaster occurs. And we've seen some in the chat box. So some are saying they plan on changing suppliers. They have alternate suppliers they can rely on. Some are also saying their employees, they'll basically change how they pay them. So instead of paying a fixed salary, it will now be commission based. So yeah, that's the first point here. Employee policies and training. So this, again, is a prevention strategy. It's something we do before anything happens. And basically, we've agreed with our employees that in the case of any disruption, these are your roles, clearly defined. This is what you have to do. And you don't just assign tasks to them or responsibilities to them. You make sure they are trained for it. So you might have to conduct regular training. You might have to also conduct regular tests to make sure they are still capable of whatever you've trained them to do. We have structural code compliance or certification. And this may seem, this will fall under the category of common ways to deal with disruptions. So an example is a fire in the building. So the first step was to prevent it. First of all, was your factory built in compliance to the local standards? Did you fortify it further because you know in your industry maybe a fire is more likely? So you don't just go by the standards, by what the legal requirements are. You go the extra mile to fortify and make sure yours is sort of best in class, or at least it's to your satisfaction. Cybersecurity, software, hardware. So you saw earlier, people mentioned a lot of cyber threats, hacking, etc. So basically, how are you protecting your data? If you're gathering any data, how are you protecting your hardware? So you might have assets, office assets, so printers, laptops, etc. How are you securing it? How are you securing your customer data? These are prevention strategies, and these are things we should have in place before any disruptions occur. Data protection systems. So basically, how are you storing your customer data? Are they encrypted? Do you have passwords? Do employees transfer company data onto their personal devices? And then how do you make sure this doesn't go out there? You are securing it. Smoke, again, related to the structural compliance. Smoke or fire detection and suppression. So aside detecting it, what do you have around? So let's say you deal with flammable raw materials. What do you have around to help you in case there's a fire? These are prevention strategies. These are common things that could help. Okay, these are things you could expect. The second step, response strategies. So now it's already occurred. What do we do about it? Each department needs to have some detailed emergency response plan to include exactly what each member of the team should be doing in case of a disruption. So there's a fire in the building. What do the accountants do? They are part of the team. Do the accountants go down, help with putting out the fire, or they just leave and then probably help with evacuating the rest of the team? Or there's some other team that's responsible for that. Basically, what do you do in the case of a disruption? These response strategies can be split into 4 coordinated parts. So we deal with the first part. The first part has to do with talent and strategy. So again, we are on the response phase. So tragedy has occurred. So let's take COVID-19 as an easy example. COVID-19 has occurred. We are at the beginning of it. We are in the midst of it. The numbers are climbing up. what do we do about our talent and the strategy of our business? What are some things we can do in response, or given the time, what are some things we did in response or are still doing in response to COVID-19 with relation to talent and our business strategy? So again, to the chat box. So some mentioned earlier with changing, so instead of paying wages or salaries, they've shifted to commissions. What some other things we did? So instead of laying off, what some other creative ways we dealt with the talent or the employees in our company, in our business strategy? Let's use the chat box. So Nadia says, learn new skills as in training. Okay. Esther says capacity building. Esther, could you elaborate on that? So how exactly are you doing that? Notion converted to part-time sales team. Okay, nice. Do we have any other creative ideas we've used or we are looking to explore? So in terms of talent and our business strategy. So Jackie said, in busy times, people help each other in different jobs. Okay, so then cross-functionality. So you don't just say you're an accountant, so you're not going to help with sales calls because lots of customers are calling. You'd say you are just an accountant. Abimbola says, we are planning to retain key staff. Do we share options to drive loyalty? Okay. We also want to pivot so that we can sell new solutions. Right, cool. How to invest in digital content, outsourcing some functions. Okay. So you see a lot of people, basically either you retrain your staff or you've already made sure that they're able to serve cross-functional roles to then help with other departments. Meaning is saying offer commissions to non-sales teams. Okay, so basically help them with the sales department. So yeah, so similar to some of the suggestions we've seen in more, let's say, more big English words, review employment contract terms, requirements, restrictions, and responsibilities. So again, what do we do with the accountants? We have reduced sales. Basically, we have to change how we are selling our product. The accountants may not be so busy, but what do they do to help? Because again, we still have to pay them full salary. So what's the best use for our already existing talent? Implement and monitor safe, connected, and flexible working arrangements. So this wasn't mentioned, but then also another option is working from home. So this is a big one, which has become more trendy given the recent occurrences, but some companies actually already had this in place. And this has actually gotten so big to the extent you have tech giants in Western countries. So for example, Twitter is implementing working from home policy where it's permanently part of their culture. Facebook also has a similar thing to the extent that people are even moving away from where they live because you live in an area where it's very expensive, say New York or San Francisco, you're paying ridiculous rent and you are just working from home. Instead, you could go somewhere else where it's cheaper, you have a good internet connection and still perform your duties. But then on the company side, you still need to implement and make sure you've provided the tools these employees need. So reassess talent strategy. So we saw a lot of training new workers, helping, so accountants going to help the sales department, etc. So putting our accountant on a sales call, you're making him cold call clients. What does he do? What does he need to learn how to do? Do you provide them with scripts? What do they do to speak to these customers? How do they sell your product? And also looking at interim fit for purpose operating models. So we saw Nishin mentioned they are now looking at more online channels. So this is a fit for purpose operating model. So maybe you're a restaurant, you are traditionally an in-person, so a restaurant where people have to come in to purchase your product, but then now you're supposed to, you're forced to explore delivery systems. So this is a fit for purpose operating model. How do you make sure you still deliver the quality expected with this new model? Also, another step is adopt regulatory and governance protocols. So this will be more relatable with companies where you have employees or factory workers, so people down on the factory line who are working together to produce whatever product you're making. Now we have social distancing. Does your current operating model fit with the protocols government is requesting? Social distancing, what's the distance between each of these workers? Are they using masks? What are they wearing? How frequently do they wash their hands, etc.? The second aspect in response to this, okay, wait, we have one more. To replan strategic growth. And some of us may have to partner with other companies, and also mergers and acquisition ambitions become more prevalent. The second is, again, what we are focusing on, financial management. So in terms of financial management, what are some of the responses we had? What are some of the creative ways we had to respond to? Again, we use COVID-19 because it's the clearest example and it's what we're experiencing now. So again, in the chat box, what are some financial management creative things we did to respond to COVID-19 to ensure business continuity? How did we make sure we were surviving financially? What did we do with customers, suppliers, etc.? To the chat box. Hi, Benoa from Bangladesh. So what we are trying to do now is explore what did we have to do in terms of our finances to, Notion, I would explain again. So I'm asking, we discussed earlier some of the creative things we did in terms of talent in our business strategy. So now I'm asking, in terms of the financial aspects of our business, what are certain creative things we did in response to COVID or we are still doing? So in terms of our customers, our supply chain. So for example, you were operating out of a factory. Are you still paying full rent? What are some creative things you have to do, basically? So Abimbola says, to ease cash flow, we implemented a 50% advance payment and reduced credits to 15 days instead of the 30 days payment term. We also asked for 50% credit line from our suppliers. So this is actually interesting. So on the customer front, he is asking for more money for them to pay more earlier and also reduce credit days. But then on the supply side, he's again watching out for himself, asking for a 50% credit line. That's actually very creative. And if we are able to pull this off, this actually helps you a lot. It goes a long way. So again, what other creative financial strategies did we employ, or are we still employing during COVID? Okay, so yeah, this counts. So Amma is saying working from home and using only contract staff as and when we get a job. So yeah, this also helps in terms of reducing the expenditure on salaries and wages, and also rent, because if you're working from home, you do not need an office space. Our customers were mostly supportive and some have given advances and orders to help with cash flow. Okay, so then yeah, that's really creative. So customers are giving advances, so they are paying earlier and they're also placing some orders earlier to help with cash flow. Priscilla says sourcing for grants applied for the government palliative for COVID-19. Okay, yes, some governments are helping companies deal with it financially. Notion says we have made few solutions, reduced days of work. Okay, so he reduced the number of days they have to work. Joanne renegotiated her rent agreements. Okay, nice. So, like we've mentioned, the entire aim of what we are trying to do. So, we had one person saying, customers pay earlier, my supplier, I'll pay you later. All he's trying to do is just implement cash conservation. Whatever cash he has or is supposed to get, he wants to retain that. And whatever cash is going out, he wants to make sure it's going out he wants to make sure it's not going to go out in a way where it negatively impacts his financial position. We also have evaluating working capital and liquidity requirements. So working capital, basically what we are spending on operations and liquidity. So we had someone asking for renegotiation of their loan agreements. So basically trying to be more liquid. So you have a company again, there's this car rental company, it's called Hertz. I think they're either bankrupt now or on their way to bankruptcy, but basically they lost a huge chunk of their stock price, their market capitalization, because it's a car rental company basically, and they had a lot of loans which were asset-backed loans. So basically what that meant was they have a fleet of vehicles which they rent out, and based on the value of the vehicles that they have, they rent out for loans. So let's say you have $1 million worth of cars you've been renting, and then you use this to get another loan with, let's say, $1 million, and you say you're backing that loan with this asset of cars, basically meaning if you were unable to pay these loans, they can claim your car as compensation as collateral, basically. The risk with that was it wasn't liquid, because like we see on the front end, on the customer side, it's COVID-19. How many people are going to rent cars? Where are they going? So first of all, you have the problem of reduced sales. And second of all, you've got so much assets which is doing nothing. It's basically parked. They actually had problems finding a place to park the cars. Third of all, the value of these assets basically just depleted. The value of a car is one of the fastest things to deplete. And you have loans which are backed by these assets. So the value of your cars are going down, and you've gone for a loan which is based on the value of these cars. So they had multiple problems on every side, and they had to basically relook at their liquidity, and they saw they were not liquid. They had to go for more loans. No one wanted to give them any more loans. They wanted to raise capital, they couldn't. So again, it would be good for all of us to evaluate our working capital and liquidity requirements. Another that I think we mentioned is control discretionary OPEX and CAPEX. So basically OPEX is the expenses we incur with our day-to-day operational activities. CAPEX is more of our capital expenditure. So these are typically expenditures for business assets that are going to last for more than a year, an accounting year. So basically controlling this on OPEX, we had a lot of people were saying they're changing how they're paying their workers. They are employing more, they're outsourcing parts of their work. Basically, you do not have to be a full-time employee. That's managing OPEX. And then on CAPEX, during COVID-19, now is not the time to test a new product. Let's say it's not based, it's nothing related to COVID-19. Now is not the time for you to be checking which of your packaging works best. There's more long-term research. So basically things like research and development are put on hold because you need to watch how you're spending your money. Securing access to short-term financing facilities and government financial support. So we saw someone mention in the chat box. So one of their solutions was sometimes you managing your finances is not enough. You need to find some external assistance. Do you go to a venture capital firm or you go to the government, where the government is going to give you better terms? In terms of the VCs, we had some companies do so. I'm not sure how many of us know, but there's a company, Airbnb. They basically deal with rentals. They were forced to raise money from venture capitalists just to deal with COVID-19. They had short-term financing issues. They had to find short-term financing, and their best bet was to raise money from venture capitalists. But for some businesses, we qualify for government aid, and then we are able to benefit from that as well. Another control we could use is implementing equity raising and low-cost debt refinancing. So some of us are mentioning in the chat book again the government-backed loans. These are also low-cost debt refinancing, in the sense the government would like for you to pay back, but if you're unable to pay back, that's also fine. Engaging with key lenders, suppliers, and customers. So like we saw in the chat box, talk to your lenders, talk to your suppliers, talk to your customers. So on your customers, what do you do? What can you do about them? Those who have already placed orders. On your suppliers, how do you pay them? How do you already pay what you owe them? So let's say you purchased some raw material on credit and now payment is due. You need to speak to them. You can't just say you're no longer going to pay. Or let's say you're renting your building, but now you're working from home and no longer using your building. You still have to speak to your landlord and negotiate the terms. Exit non-core and underperforming assets. And this comes in so many senses. So let's say you've already outsourced your production or you are forced to outsource production. What products are you going to produce? Are you going to spend all your money still producing your entire range of products, or you are going to focus more on your core products? That's what we are trying to say. You should focus more on your core products and not underperforming assets. So the third aspect is customer engagement. Now, COVID-19 has occurred. We've spoken to the customers. We've told them we are dealing with these issues. They should know, but we still have to tell them. How do we speak to our customers? Basically, how do we bring them on our side? And in this case, we are not just looking at the understanding customers. So, for example, Jackie had customers who were willing to forgo receiving the product now, and then some of them were even placing more orders which they wouldn't have placed otherwise. So they are paying now for something they do not need now, would expect later. What are some other things, some other ways we've engaged with our customers, or we think we could engage with our customers in terms of responding to COVID-19 or any other disruptions that could occur? How are some ways we could speak to our customers or interact with them? So basically, an example would be, do we sell to them at a discount? Do we change the packaging? Do we have some sort of loyalty program created just for this? As in, if you buy now and you are willing to receive the product later, you get this benefit. What are some things we did for our customers? So again, using the chat box. Okay, so we have Nadia saying, so she called the customers and asked them how safe and well they are. Okay, so basically checking on them, buying goodwill. Free deliveries for top 5 customers. Okay, nice, Priscilla, that's interesting. Free deliveries. Okay. Any other creative ways we engage with our customers in response to COVID-19 or any other similar disruptions we faced? Or how do we think we could engage with our customers? So Notion says we have been given promotions and sales. Okay. Discounts on orders above a certain threshold. Nice. Okay, so Notion is noting he saw an increase in online sales and through digital marketing. Okay, so basically you are saying you explored digital marketing either further or you exploited it further. Okay, so we are seeing a lot of discounts, checking on them, and business running a promo on bulk purchases. Okay, so yeah, the key thing is to engage with customers. But then one thing which maybe was unintentionally not mentioned is to support business continuity. Yes, we know you are checking on your customers, but again, at the end of the day, you still have a business to run. You don't just check on them to find out how they are doing. How do you let them know how you are doing and how they can help you do better? How do you engage with them to help them support business continuity? So then that's where we implement something like what Jackie said in the chat box of, well, you are doing well, I'm not doing well. What can you do to support us? You think you could perhaps purchase a bit more or pay earlier than we agreed? What could you do? Another thing is to secure commercial and financial support from customers. So this is a good time to find who your key customers are. So besides buying our product, what could you do to assist us? Because a lot of your customers may actually be just one vertical away from your business. What things could you do in common to help each other? So let's say they've got a supply chain, or they've got a delivery route, and now you're forced to sort of ship products to certain places where they would have had to come in person. Are there any synergies between you and your customers which you could use or not exploit, but then use to your advantage? Develop communication strategy with frontline employees. So again, this is you talking to your frontline employees. These are the employees that directly interface with your customers. You need a communication strategy for them. Basically, how do they talk to their customers? You might have a lot of unfulfilled orders. Customers are calling and finding out, I placed this order a month ago, it was supposed to come in now. Yes, we are all going through COVID. So you can't just say, just because you are going through COVID, it should affect my business. You need to basically you're putting your employees in a position they might not have been in before. It's not a typical business, occurrence. How do they deal with such customers? How do they talk to them? Review orders and commitments and inventory. So again, like we had someone saying earlier, basically you go back to the drawing board and look at what orders do you have to fulfill, what commitments have you already engaged in, and what's your inventory. So let's say you had to produce your, so we saw earlier in the chat box, someone saying the borders, trade barriers, as in some borders are closed, so the flights not coming in. Let's say you produce your product in, say, another country, a foreign country, and now the border is closed. You are no longer able to invest in inventory. You are not able to increase your supply. What do you do about it? Do you sell to your top customers? Do you sell to anyone who just comes, basically first come, first serve? What do you do about it? This is something we need to look at and review orders. Basically, the orders you've already received, how are you going to meet them? Using technology to improve efficiency in customer communications. So this were tools like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, basically LinkedIn, your social media tools. These are tools which are created basically, and they have their value add aside in the networks. They have a huge value add in terms of ease of sharing, of communicating. Basically, you have something to say. How do you communicate it to the masses in an easy way? You could simply send out a tweet. So for example, someone mentioned they have discounts. How do your customers find out about your discounts? Is calling each of them really the most efficient way you could do it? Yes, it's more personal. They may appreciate it more. But can you really call all your customers? If not, what else can we use? And that's where technology comes into play. The next thing we sort of touched on is supply chain. So some of us have already mentioned that we had to look at different suppliers. Some have also said we had to change our payment terms. Aside those two things, what else can we do with our supply chain? Aside just changing them or not being able to pay, what else can we do in response to COVID-19? Or what else maybe we did not want to do or we've been forced to do because of COVID-19 in terms of our supply chain, getting our raw materials? What else have we had to do? So an example could be like the company who would have to import from China or any other foreign country. The borders are closed. What do you do? Do you start producing in-house? Do you have the capability? What creative things did we have to do? It would also apply to service companies. Anyone, what did you have to do in terms of your supply chain? The things you need to acquire to serve your customers. Let's use the chat box. So again, the question is on what are some creative ways we could deal with our supply chain problems given disruptions like COVID-19. So Notion is saying, okay, no, trying to raise funds. Olamide is saying, I need to acquire or be in touch with good logistics companies to send products. Okay, and this will apply to basically any company because now almost every company is looking at delivery, some sort of delivery supply chain where even if I used to have an in-person store or service, people are now forced to get it some other way where it's not in person. So there's a lot of load on logistics companies. Does your currently existing logistics company have the capability to still serve you at the quality and um, at the quality or at the price at which you've been engaging with them? Francis is saying to look locally for raw materials. So this implying he used to Francisca, sorry, used to import or get it somewhere else and is now looking at local alternatives to their raw materials. Esther, so partnership with shipping lines and airlines for cargo. Okay. So Olamide is looking for logistics. So Esther is in partnerships with our growers. Okay, nice. So yeah, this is the best time. So let's say you work with farmers. This is the best time to speak to them, actually get to know them, understand their business and how they actually supply you, and get creative on how they can supply you. So yeah, first is to identify the risks and potential disruptions. So like Esther was saying, one is to identify, are your farmers still able to supply you your product? Do they have issues with logistics, saying now they can no longer supply you because you're too far away? So you need to find some other way. So maybe you have to come and pick it up yourself. Develop contingency plans for operational disruption. So if you're no longer able to get from farmer A, who else can you get from? If you're no longer able to import from country A, where can you import from? Who can you source from locally? Collaborate with customers and suppliers, specifically synchronize operational capacities to prioritize mutually share infrastructure. So like I was saying earlier, this is the best time to find synergies between you and your customers. How do you create synergies and how can you both benefit from each other's resources and assets? Manage inventory and cash flow through mutual consent. Adapt supply and fulfillment patterns with interim payments as required. So the clearest example with this would be, for example, your warehouse, where your storage facility. You are no longer able to move products. So let's say you had an agreement with your landlord or the owner of the storage facility where you store the products there for 30 days, you pay X amount. But now because of COVID-19, sales have dipped or some other occurrence, you can no longer sell the products within the 30 days. What do you do with it? How do you renegotiate the terms you already had? And these are not going to be permanent terms. They are going to be temporary. Do you forego this month's warehouse cost? Is he going to give you some sort of discount? You basically need to speak to them to find out. So now that's where we go to the response stage. This response stage, what we've been talking about, this is not where you do the planning. As you can see, most of the things we are having to do is how do we deal with what's already happening? So what I'd like to find out is, what tools did you have when COVID-19 interrupted your business? In the chat box, what financial tools did you use in managing continuity? Aside financial tools, what did you use during COVID-19 based on the interruptions? Did you use other chat apps because maybe using WhatsApp to communicate with your customers is not enough? Now you need to create an email list to be able to send them better information. What tools did we have to use? Especially in the chat box. So Notion is saying data analysis, consolidated inventory. Okay. So data analysis, consolidated inventory, sales analysis. So we are seeing a lot of analysis. Okay, so what tools did you use for the analysis? Basically, where did you have this data? How were you interpreting this data? Okay, so one tool is a point of sale system. Abimbola uses a tool called Zoho, yes, which has a dashboard. Notion is saying inventory systems. So basically tracking your expenses and your income. Okay. Jackie relied a lot on good relationships with customers. Okay. So Rita used business owner expense tracker. Okay. So yeah, there are several tools we could use. And again, we are looking at the financial aspects, but then even with the financial, we still need to have the foundations. And the most common would be communication tools. So let's say you employed, because of the financial consequences, you're no longer employing staff on a full-time basis. It's now part-time. How do you ensure these companies are still working as they should? What are some communication tools we used? So aside the finance ones of Zoho and business management systems, what are some communication tools we used? So Zainab used e-travel and tours. Okay, including business intelligence tools. So some communicated, so Hawa is saying she communicated through calls and WhatsApp. Okay, so using the traditional phone calling and using WhatsApp. For communication with staff, Olamide was using WhatsApp. And here, Notion, yes, exactly like we are doing now. A lot of people use Zoom. With suppliers, Olamide was using WhatsApp and email. Okay. And Instagram. Nice. Emails and WhatsApp. So there's a lot of emailing and WhatsApp, and we see some Zoom. So now let's look at some financial tools. So we've already mentioned a few. So we saw Zoho, some generally just said business systems. What are some we can look at? And this was something we touched on in the first session. But one we can look at is Wave. Wave is an accounting system. It's good for freelancers, so you can be a one-man show and you could be using it for proprietors and medium-sized businesses. The good thing about it is it's free. We also have another system called FreshBooks. So FreshBooks includes project management. It has project management capabilities, which makes it a good choice for businesses that work on a project basis. So basically, let's say you're a design team, you're a service business, you come up with a project. Okay, so we have COVID-19. How are we going to serve our customers? You've got this online project we are doing. How do you track expenses? How do you track how much time you are spending on it? Basically, how do you get comprehensive analysis? You could use a tool like FreshBooks. It has some free aspects. It also has some paid aspects. So basically, these tools, we are just trying to explore. Some of them we could explore. And again, it would be on a company business by business basis to know which one works best for us. We also have QuickBooks, which is good for sole proprietors and small business, also paid. And there's Sage. So there are different Sage packages. One is the Sage 50 Cloud. It's good for small businesses, mid-sized and enterprise level businesses. And this is paid. And we can look at some of their interfaces. And basically, they essentially do the same thing. We have, this is Wave's interface. For me personally, I like how it looks. I like the color scheme, etc. But the whole point is to have some management system, financial management system, accounting system that works best for you and your business. You should understand what's being produced for you. You should understand how it's being presented. Also understand how to use it. So there's Wave, this is the interface. This is the interface for FreshBooks, also quite user-friendly. There's QuickBooks, which is more rugged. It's provided by Intuit. Then there's the Sage 50, which is also very rugged. And now let's explore. So we touched on using software last time for financial management. And I'd like to know what some advantages we'd like to explore. What are some advantages of using this software? So the first one is simple data entry. So an advantage of using software is everything is already labeled. So basically there's a template. They ask you what were sales for the month of January. You input that. They ask you whatever they ask you. Everything is basically labeled. So with a bit of studying and practicing, you can know your way around it on how to use it. Also fast processes. Basically, you're no longer relying on, let's say, an accountant where you have to send them all of your data and then wait for them to send their data in an accounting format in, let's say, a week or in 3 days or whatever time period they've agreed on. With these accounting software, as soon as you put it in, it's recorded and it's presentable. Automation of reports and analysis. as you continue using these software, you can automate a lot of stuff. So things you can automate are, let's say, salaries. You can set up reminders. You can set up payroll. So whatever amount, you can also set up invoices. Someone makes a purchase, you send them an invoice. You also get a pop-up to check up on clients. Another is automation of tasks. So basically now you no longer have to worry with invoicing clients. So you saw earlier, someone mentioned they use point of sale systems. With this, you no longer have to write a physical invoice. This is done and it's already backed up automatically. Another is reduction of errors. So with this, they're able to easily track wherever the error is coming from, because if you put in something erroneous, you're able to easily see it. Either the system is not going to accept it, or you are going to have an immediately understandable interface where you can see this amount doesn't match what I was expecting. You see where revenues, you see where your costs are. You can basically break it up into the different aspects and interpret it. You also have integration with other systems. So basically you can, for example, connect the software to your bank's online system. When you take money out, you can have it immediately recorded as owner drawings. When you put money in, you can have it recorded. When a customer makes a payment, you can have a dashboard where you see each of the payments for the customers. You no longer have to wait for a customer to send you a message or an email saying, I have paid. But then we also have disadvantages. The first is price. So a lot of the software would be available for a typical medium-sized business. It would be available for maybe free, with some elements having to be paid for. The disadvantage here is, as you scale up, or depending on the size of your business, you may have to pay for this, and you may have to pay certain amounts. And some of these, they are monthly payments. Some of them, they are paid based on the number of team members that will be using the software. This can be quite pricey. There's also the disadvantage of implementation. In session 1, we had people asking, can I take control of my financial management myself? Do I need to get certification? Do I need to be a chartered financial analyst or chartered accountant? And my answer was no, you can use software. But then the thing is, in implementation, you need to have knowledge of how to use these systems. This can be a disadvantage because we are dealing with COVID. Do I spend my time on operations? I spend my time in my financial management, or do I get someone else to do it? Another disadvantage is support. So again, since you're using software, you do not have someone in person there to guide you. If you make a mistake, you do not catch it. You do not have, if the system also doesn't catch it, there's no one else to see it if you are doing it alone. To get support, or let's say there's some sort of error, or you somehow manage to break something in the system and you need to fix it, you actually have to pay for support, because the systems do not come with support, and that's expensive too. And then we have the disadvantage of specialized needs. Again, after all, these software, they'll be made for the typical business. There'll be general systems. They may have some specialized aspects, but nothing can fit you like a tailor-made software for your business. But then you know it's very expensive to make a tailor-made software made for just your business. So this can be a disadvantage in the sense there may be some elements of the software which you do not need, and some elements which you need but are not available, and that can be a headache. So this brings us to sort of rounding up. Takeaways from this session. What did we essentially get from this? So we realized business continuity is basically planning for it is more important during disruptions, because we shouldn't be responding. We shouldn't be planning for the disruptions whilst we have the disruptions. So now we have COVID. Now is not the time to be planning for COVID. It's already happened. We should have planned already. But now is a good time to realize that we need to have planned for something like COVID, which is, again, why this session was important. So at least now we know, with lessons learned from responding to COVID, we know how to respond to other disruptions. And from this session, we realized we still, even if we survive COVID, which we are surviving, we still need to come up with solutions and strategies, basically plan for if this were to happen again or something worse were to happen, what are we going to do? Will we still bring work from home policies, or will we still be using commissions? Basically, now is the time to take feedback from our employees. So we moved you, the accountants, from from accounting and now you're helping the sales staff. Was this the best move? How efficient were the accountants? Did this help? Would we do this again? You need to plan for all this. We also had various strategies involved in developing a plan. So we saw the preventive strategies. We also saw the responsive strategies. We also saw some financial software systems we could explore. And again, the systems mentioned are not recommendations. They're more of to inspire, to help us find a starting point in our research, to find what actually works for us. So in the first session we covered, we actually need financial management. In this session, we've seen some tools that could help us with financial management. But these are not answers. They are not final answers. It's to spark the discovery of these answers because no one can find the solutions for your business like you would. We also had some advantages and limitations of using software. So again, using software is not the only solution. It's one of the solutions. And basically, we need to assess for our business what aspects we'll be using software for, what aspects we'll be outsourcing to, let's say, an accountant or a financial analyst. So that brings us to the end of this session. And if anyone has questions on any parts of the presentation, you can ask using the chat box. It was nice having all of you from the first session and this second session. And I hope you have some other future engagements. These are our contact details. And again, it was nice presenting to all of you.
Thank you very much, Ralph, for another wonderful presentation, building on financial management and business continuity. In just one moment, a poll will show up on the screen. Please, everyone, can you answer the poll questions? This is the evaluation of this webinar. And once again, this information is very important to help us choose the right programs and develop good content to provide all of you with. So once again, here we have just a quick 3-question poll, and we will take some questions from the floor. As I will, don't think there have been too many questions in the chat. Jackie Corlett is asking regarding the inclusion of financial management feature. I'm guessing this has to do with the tools that Ralph just showed. Jackie Corlett, will you unmute yourself?
Yes, hello.
Thank you, Jackie.
Ralph, thanks so much for such a great presentation. Fantastic. I'm just wondering, are any of the programs you've mentioned, do they incorporate any sort of inventory management, like raw materials in and being able to include that in the financial management system?
Yes, on that. So there are different software and they all have different packages. So some of them have, so let's say inventory management, they'll have it on a free basis. Some will have it on a paid basis. So you still have to figure out which software works best for you, because aside inventory management, for the different parts of your business, which one works best for you? And is it free or do you have to pay? And how much do you have to pay? So yes, a lot of them do have it, but the question is whether it's a paid service or a free service.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
And thank you, Jackie. Rosalind has asked if these same tools are generating income statements, etc. Rosalind, would you like to unmute and explain yourself further? Rosalind?
Hello.
There you are.
Well, yes, I just wanted to find out if any of these tools will automatically generate income statement at the end of the day.
Yes, so a lot of the tools, yes, would help you generate. So if you're in the first session, the tools, basically the information I mentioned in the first session that you would need to help you with financial management, almost all, I think all of them would help you with populating that information, so financial statements, etc. And on top of that, they also have dashboards which are intuitive. So even before generating the statements, you can already see what's happening. So there'll be a dashboard where you see, for example, sales or accounts receivable, etc. So you can even track it without generating the statements. And the only time you need to generate the statements is, let's say you want something more, you want it in a more presentable manner where it can be printed out or shared with other people. But on a day-to-day basis, you'd be able to see a dashboard which has a lot of the common things you'd have in the financial statements, like income statement, etc. It will be an intuitive dashboard beyond the statements.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosalind. If there are any other questions, please unmute yourself one at a time to ask the question. The poll will stay up for a couple more minutes. Please do endeavor to complete all 3 questions and press submit. Does anyone else have a question for Ralph?
Terry, just to add that I'm unable to submit the poll. I don't know if it's coming from my end.
Okay. If you have completed all 3 questions, then you should see a submit button at the bottom of the screen.
Yes, it's great. It's great out. Okay, but I can only see 2 questions. I cannot see the 3rd question.
All right, thank you, Rosalind. So again, any other questions for Ralph? Bimbola had an interesting statement. I might put you on the spot, dear. You said different software work for different operations and some not. My experience is that if you do manufacturing or production, then the system has to be able to allow one to combine products to arrive to the final product, both for ease of inventory and also for costing. Bimbola, would you like to discuss this further? Please unmute yourself.
I've done that. Thank you very much.
You.
Good afternoon, everyone. What I was trying to elicit there was the experience I've had in our operation with respect to making a decision on our accounting software to use to manage day-to-day operation, not just for internal control, but also for reporting and as well as managing finances. What I saw was some softwares were useful for inventory management to know what we received and what was going out and what we had and the cash that came in, income, and of course, what went out. But then if you had to put together 2 elements to come to a product, it was impossible to be able to manage it. There was no way to join 2 items together. If, for example, on top of my head, you are in cosmetics and you have shea butter and you have cocoa butter and you have an essential oil, for example, and you had to mix these 3 items in a formulation to come to a product. It becomes a nightmare because there is no composite product that will draw from each of these products in the inventory and reduce them in your assets to create a single product, which you then know the actual cost of the product you have to be able to price it in terms of how much you should sell with the cost of your overhead added to it. So this was my experience, and I struggled a lot with deciding on which product to use. And I realized to be able to have all of this in a single bouquet, I had to take different models of different products. And for a small business, you may not be able to afford it. So what I decided was to take a solution. I use Zoho at the moment, and Zoho continues to add models in their system. I typed in earlier that the new element they have added in their module is analytics, which allows me ability to do business intelligence, data analysis to come up to be able to do executive decision making. It is not complete at the moment. There are still things I have to do manually, but the basics of balance sheet, income statement, P&L, etc. Some of them are still there. Some of them we have to do journals to be able to include. Some of them we have to actually lift report out from Zoho, pivot them in a table in Excel to be able to have our reporting. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abimbola. Ralph, I don't know if you want to respond to Abimbola briefly before we close the poll.
Yeah, so on that, I agree. Yeah. So it touches on the earlier question of would the platform or the system you're using have all the solutions you need? And the question is, they might not. And even if that system you're using has the solution, it might be a paid service, whereas you are using the free service. Another thing too is in integrating it with the different systems you're using, because let's say inventory management is free on Wave, but it's not free on QuickBooks, and you're using both. The challenge with using both is now you can't customize either at an let's say a financially affordable manner. So then that's where you have to start looking at. Because if it's really a pain point, then you have to start looking at customized software. So either you look at more expensive software that meets your needs, or you start customizing your own software. But then for the typical business, most of these might have solutions. They might have solutions, but the issue is whether you want to pay for them. So yeah, it's either you pay for the additional element or you build your own system. But most likely, if you pay, you'll be able to use it.
Okay, thank you very, very much for that answer. And if you have, folks, if you have more questions, please do feel free to reach out to myself or any other of the SheTrades staff to forward your questions to Ralph. And then we will be sending out this webinar, the recording of it a bit later tomorrow. And again, if you have other questions or you want Ralph's contact information, maybe reach out to me or Regina, and we can try to arrange that. Thank you very much, Ralph, for another fantastic session. Really love working with Growth Mosaic. You guys are doing great things, I think, for financial management and strategy and helping businesses grow in Ghana and beyond. So with that, I'll be happy to turn the floor back over to Regina to end the meeting. Thank you everyone for participating in the poll and in this session.
Great, thank you, Kerry. And again, thank you, Ralph, and the Growth Mosaic team. We are glad that SheTrades Commonwealth and Growth Mosaic could partner to deliver these sessions. And we are also grateful for everyone who's been a part of these sessions. Thank you for your active participation as well. And we hope this webinar has really been impactful. So take care, everyone, and keep safe. Bye-bye.
Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye.